Well, hey, everybody, it's Lisa from Not That Hard to Homeschool, and I have a special guest here today. This is Christy Faith. She is the author of Homeschool Rising. You might have seen her on TikTok or Instagram. She has a thriving Thrive community for homeschool families. And Christy has an interesting background, so I want to let her tell you a little bit about that. But we're going to talk about mid-year pivots today.
Mm.
So stay tuned. As soon as you get to know Christy, you're going to want to listen to the rest of this recording and really find out. We've been hearing more and more questions like, should I pull my kid out mid-year? Like something's not working in their educational environment, but how do I make that decision? So we're going to talk about that today. So Christy, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank you. So happy to be on today. Let's talk about mid-year pivoting.
Oh, tell us a little bit about your background first, because I want you to
Sure.
share that story. It's kind of a unique perspective on homeschooling.
Yes. Yeah. So I am one of those people who had kind of a profound deconstruction over a decade ago where we were making our entire living based off of the system. We
Mhm.
had a private learning center and consulting firm. We did interventions with kids, reading intervention, all sorts of things, tutoring, test prep. We ran a homeschool out of our center, but I should clarify our homeschool, we were in Southern California, we were in Los Angeles. Our homeschool primarily had like pro athletes or child actors
Right.
where they had to, it was more utilitarian why they had to
Yes.
finish their school quickly and run across town to an audition, or another student who would be gone for 3 full weeks at a surf competition in Australia. So then
Yep.
you wouldn't be able to do that if you were attending school. So even though we ran a homeschool, it wasn't a philosophical homeschool. It was
Yeah.
definitely before my deconstruction.
Yeah.
And, as we were running our center in an extremely privileged area with a lot of wealth, these were the kids of billionaires, A-listers, rich and
Yeah.
famous. The list goes on. We have a really fun list of all of our celebrities that I can't share, but they were really great people. But here's the thing. These kids had everything. They
Yeah.
had everything available to them. If they needed tutoring, if they needed Orton Gillingham reading tutoring, boom, they could afford it. If they needed a private football coach to fix
Yeah.
their whatever, they could get it. So as we were going along in our career and building this really successful tutoring and test prep and educational center in Southern California, I started to really look around and ask myself, what are we doing? And this is always, I get myself into so much trouble all the time because I ask myself big questions. It's just how I was made and I can't help it, but it causes huge life changes for me. So we started to see, a lot of these, especially when you get to junior high and high school, you're starting to see some serious problems. You're starting to see anxiety disorders, suicidal tendencies, dangerous behaviors, including like very dangerous promiscuity, things like that, that are extremely damaging to your emotional health and your psychological health, particularly practicing these things, drugs at such a young age, of course, damaging always. But and so we started to look around, and I would think these kids have everything.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the outcomes be better?
Yeah. Right.
Wouldn't they be happier?
Mhm.
The families aren't happier. Billionaires are just as miserable as anyone else.
Yeah.
I know this for a fact now. And so we just started to question, what are we really doing? Like, what is, and this is the question I present in the very first chapter of Homeschool Rising. What is an education?
Yeah.
Because up until then, an education to me was the filling of a bucket, right?
Right.
Like the
Right. Yep.
said. It was because we got to get a career. We got to get you into that Ivy League. You need to know all this stuff so that you can, you need to play the whole game, get the right score, all of this so that we can get you into Harvard. Why? Oh, so you can be an absolute emotional wreck when you get there. And I
Yeah.
know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I'm not also at the same time. So it's like we're launching extremely unhealthy
Mhm.
teenagers
Yeah.
into the world at 18, and that really bothered me. It
Mhm.
really did. And here I am, and then I was late to become a mother because of infertility, so we were able to build this business. And when I did become a mother, we were able for me to stay at home, and that changes everything. It changes
Yeah.
everything for me. Like, what are we going to do with this kid? How are we going to educate this kid? Meanwhile, long story short, Our homeschool at our center, remember, quite utilitarian, not philosophical, it wasn't like a Charlotte Mason plenary or anything like that, um, is growing. There's a high demand for homeschooling kids at our center. This is totally before the pandemic. And so I just started reading some homeschool intellectuals. I was
Mhm.
like, oh wow, what's classical education? So
Yeah.
I bought some books. What's it? And then it's like that rabbit hole of what's Charlotte Mason,
Right.
what's this crazy thing called unschooling, all of that. And it just completely blew my mind, changed my mind
Yeah.
to the point where I have a master's degree in history where I'm literally trained how to teach college students history.
Yeah.
And my own kids have never even touched or opened a history textbook. So
Hmm.
that's how much it was a pretty
Yeah.
incredible transformation. It led to us selling our business, in fact, moving across states, and now we're in Denver, Colorado. And that's kind of the long story short. But the perspective, I think, why my voice lands on the internet is because I was there. I was completely entrenched
Yeah.
and hoodwinked by this system that told me what I had to do, that I wasn't possibly capable of doing it myself, and all of this. And then I just started to question it and deconstruct it. So, and that's kind of what started this whole thing with me and my book with Homeschool Rising.
Yeah.
It is about shattering the myths,
Mhm.
finding courage so
Yeah.
that you can confidently say no to the
Yeah.
system, because quite frankly, it's not that great. And I prove it. And I prove it in chapter 2, if you're wondering. So,
Okay, that's a great lead in because
okay.
I think it's helpful for people to realize that you've been on both sides of the system. You've been really deeply entrenched in the system, working with people who are going to go on to perpetrate that system, most likely, because that's what people at Harvard do. And the Ivy Leagues, really,
Yep.
that's kind of the point of the Ivies in so many ways. And you've just decided that you're leaving that system, and you've been homeschooling your kids for a couple years now,
Oh,
which
oh no, I've always, yeah,
for the whole time.
my kids have never been in school. Mm-mm.
Awesome. Okay. So you have this great perspective. I love it. And okay, so back to this question I've been seeing and we've been getting in DMs and on our Facebook pages all the time is like, is now a good time to have my kids leave public education? And I think a lot of parents have just, when you have your kids in school, you've outsourced to the school. And a lot of parents are like, they're going to take care of it. They know what my kids should study. They know when they should study it. They're going to tell me if there's problems or whatever. And now, if they consider homeschooling their kids, they're a little overwhelmed. And can they even do it? And one of the questions we answer it, it's not that hard, is that it is not that hard to homeschool. You can confidently, and even honestly with joy, homeschool your kids. And I think that's a big part of your message too, is that it doesn't have to be this complex, huge bureaucracy to educate your kids. So when do you think is the best time to pull your kids from education? What if have you seen parents where you're just like, oh, I know the signs. Now's the time to leave school.
Well, the time to pull your kid out of the system is now. I don't care where you are in your school year, and I will say why. And there are clear signs, in my view, being an educational advisor for so many
Yeah.
years, teaching teachers, advising parents. Yeah, there are some signs, but the reason why now I think it comes across in parents' minds
Mhm.
is they have a half a year in. Schools run on semester and quarter
Yeah.
systems. And so when you don't fully understand homeschooling yet, you start homeschooling thinking you're also going to be doing a quarter and semester system. We train that right out of you pretty
Yeah.
quickly, but
Yeah.
that's how you're thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, here's like a clear cut. We can get the report card, boom, and then just not go back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. Now at Christmas break, if your kid is not thriving or struggling, and we can talk about some of
Yeah.
those details on what that looks like specifically, pull your kids out. But I also want to say there never is a wrong time and there never is an illegal time
Right.
to pull
Yeah.
your
I'm
children
glad you
out.
touched on that.
Every state has permissions for you to pull your child out legally at any point during the year, and
Right.
the grades don't matter. The
Right.
grades do not matter. Yes, you have different regulations in various states of reporting, but where you are in the school year is
Right.
like, just
Right.
just take that off of your plate.
Exactly. And along those lines, you don't owe your local school district
No.
what are you going to do next, who's
Nope.
going to be school. You just have to fill out the form in most states and
Yes.
just follow some very simple regulations.
Yes.
Um, the other thing a lot of people are so concerned about is if they pull their kid out mid-year, what happens to those credits, especially as they go into the high school years. And
Yeah.
here's the deal, you don't lose credits. You can count to
Mhm.
half a credit. Not a
Yes.
big deal. So if you're concerned about how to do that, leave a comment. I'll just write you 3 sentences to figure it out. It is that
Yes.
simple, truly.
It
So
it
you're not
really
going to
is
lose
that
credit.
simple.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I love that you said there's never a bad time. Now is the time to pull your kids from public
Yes.
school. I actually saw yesterday on a social media a public school in New York. Kids were trying to get to classes, but there was a demonstration about the Middle East in the middle of the school, and kids could not get to classes. They
Mhm.
were not, the other kids were barring them from moving freely around the school. And so there's just so much agenda in public
Mhm.
schools right now. It has very honestly little to do with academia. So if you're concerned about your kids learning how to read, write, think, communicate, be critical and creative and all those kind of things, public school is probably not the best place to do that.
No, or preparedness for life,
Yeah,
social emotional skills, all those
right.
things. I mean,
Yeah,
when I was doing research for Homeschool Rising,
yeah.
there were many times where I was in tears with the statistics on depression, teen
Oh, yeah.
suicide, anxiety, all of those things.
Mhm.
And yeah, homeschool kids still have those,
Yeah,
but we, as the parent, we can, it's not a complete saturation.
yeah, right, right.
We can curtail it. We have more time with our children
Mhm.
to talk to them about these things, work through these issues with them. We can take breaks from certain friend groups
Mm,
because why? Because we can,
right.
right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, we have that within our toolbox when we homeschool.
Right.
And I want to talk, there are mamas, I'm sure they're listening today, where they think they can't
Mhm.
homeschool because their kid is on an IEP. So I
Yeah,
want to talk a minute about
yeah.
that with
Mhm.
children who have special needs, who are struggling. Yesterday, I had a consultation with a mama, and she sent me her kid's IEP. When they send them to me, I always read them twice. I do an overview, and then I do a granular view and write all my notes.
Yeah.
But again, I want to remind parents, grab, you know, blow off the dust of that IEP, right? And look at the back. Look at those accommodations because as I was reading the accommodations for this kid yesterday, it's the same ding dong accommodations I've been reading for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Quiet workspace, extra time on tests, all those things either are completely eliminated when you homeschool
Right.
or they are because of a classroom environment that they need to occur,
Mhm.
right? So staying in at recess is a perfect example, which, hello, a lot of these kids,
Need
especially if your
recess.
kid has ADHD, like they need the recess, like the
Right,
last possible thing. And
right.
so what I teach in my community is, yeah, your kid has ADHD. These are great strategies so that they can love learning, live their life, learn all the things they need to learn still. Our kids still need to learn things
Right.
and thrive while they're so that's what's exciting to me about if you have a child who has special needs, you might have pediatricians and speech therapists and all sorts of people that are telling you you're not qualified.
Mhm.
You're not going to start, I mean, you're not going to start doing those therapies. That doesn't, when you homeschool, you can continue those therapies,
Right,
right?
right.
You might
And
have to pay
and
for them depending on what state you live
yeah,
in.
depending on the
But the
state. Yeah,
schooling part, all those classroom accommodations,
right.
you do not need to be a qualified professional to
Right.
do those. Yeah.
Exactly. I was talking to somebody yesterday. They want to homeschool, but they're a working parent. And I am like, hey, the homeschool landscape has changed so rapidly and significantly in the
Yes.
last 5 to 10 years that there's no reason why you can't be a working homeschool parent.
No.
And there's more and more of us. And I say us because
Yes.
Christy and I are both working homeschool parents. And
Yeah.
I have been for years. I think you have been too. I
Yes.
mean, it is just the way of it at this point. So there's so many opportunities and resources available, synchronous, asynchronous,
Mhm.
classes and networks that you can be part of that your kids they don't have to sit alone in a house, unattended. There's a lot of
Yes.
opportunities for you now, especially with all the tech that has really evolved, honestly, like at the speed of sound since 2020.
Oh, yeah. And what is so cool is, for example, my son is in an online class and he has made a really good friend who
Yeah.
lives in Romania.
Yeah.
Like, and
Super
people,
cool.
it's just, The
Yeah.
opportunities are, and yes, in-person community as well, different options. There is honestly you can outsource the whole thing if you want
Yeah.
to, but you're still a homeschooler, by the way. Even if
Right.
you outsource, you're still
Right.
in charge. You can still pull your kid anytime. But generally speaking, most mamas thrive when they do combos
Yes,
of,
exactly.
and I kind of outsource what I don't want to teach, and
Yeah.
then like history, I want to do those read alouds, and so that's what yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm just one of those mamas, and what I spend the teaching time. I have 4 kids and I work more than full time, embarrassingly so I focus on what I want to do.
Yep.
Then that's what I invest every day in, and also what each of my 4 kids needs more of
Hmm.
that individualized attention for.
Yeah.
And then the rest, I really set myself up for success with
Yeah.
self-paced stuff, even written curriculum where you can have checklists.
Yeah.
This is why when I first met you, I was like, what did I say? I said, I'm so glad you're here. The
Yeah.
world needs True North Homeschool Academy because this is how the working parent is going to accomplish this thing.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And that's part of why we started True North Homeschool Academy, is because I was working and was trying to find
Yeah.
resources with subject matter experts where my kids got to know them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so check out True North Homeschool Academy. So what are the warning signs that you see from parents or kids and you're just like, oh, it's time. They need a different educational environment. Are there markers that you can just see?
Yeah, I mean, I really look at social emotional health, academic health.
Yeah.
With social emotional health, I want parents to really consider if their child is peer oriented. And that's
Mm,
something that I look for. Peer orientation is extremely dangerous.
yeah.
This is
Yeah.
where you can read a great book on it. It's called Hold On to Your Kids by Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld. A lot of people might know those names. It is actually my favorite parenting book that has been written in the last 10 years.
Hmm.
And it's not a homeschooling book. In
Yeah.
fact, I think they mention it twice and not in a positive light.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I want that guy on my podcast because I want to be like, "Hello, dude! Like you're
Right.
literally,
Let's
yeah."
talk about this.
So yeah, yeah. But anyway, people think Okay, so people are going to be like, "Peer orientation? What is Christy talking about? What is this?"
Yeah.
It is actually a disorder,
Mhm.
and it is when peers in a nutshell, when
Yeah.
peers have become more important than parents as the primary influencers in a child's life, excuse me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And children need attachment. We know this. Studies have shown this. Children need attachment and they need it well into the teen years. People
Yes.
often think, oh, my kid turned 12, they don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, no, no, no. They need you more than ever. It
Yeah.
looks different, right? You're not snuggling on the couch all
Right.
day like you are with a
Right.
5 year old,
Right.
but they definitely need to be oriented towards a loving, safe adult in their life.
Right.
And so I think the root of a lot of these psychological and emotional problems in our schools that we're seeing
Yeah.
is the result of peer orientation, because when you hand over the authority in your child's life, who they listen to the most,
Yeah.
when you hand that over to peers, that is a very dangerous group. That
Yeah.
is an immature group. They have not grown up themselves.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's an extremely dangerous and insecure place for a
Yeah.
child to be. And yet, we actually in our society think this is normal.
Right.
Now, in Homeschool Rising, my book, I have an entire chapter on socialization, and people are
Mhm.
going to be surprised by it because my book is about busting myths. And yeah, I bust myths in the book for sure.
Mhm.
But I get to the root of why people are so concerned about homeschool socialization. I go deep into what this peer orientation is and how
Yeah.
dangerous it is, and that homeschooling is by far the easiest way.
Yeah.
The book goes into his book,
Hmm.
Hold On to Your Kids,
Yeah.
into strategies when your kids are in school on how you can take your kids back. That's how he
Yeah.
actually phrases it. Um,
Interesting.
bring them back to
Yeah.
you because they're
Yeah.
lost and they're gone.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I want to,
if you are concerned about how am I going to socialize my kid, how will my kid have a healthy social life if I pull them out of school, particularly it's a concern when you have a junior high and high schooler, because that really does look different.
yeah.
I encourage you to read that chapter in my book. I think it might set you free.
Yeah, awesome. I want to, along those same lines, I want to talk about cell phones because I think the combination of
Yes.
cell phones in public school can be
Yes.
particularly alienating to your kid's heart. Because cell phones, there's research that says when you hand a kid a cell phone within a very short amount of time, they have more in common all of a sudden with kids around the world in Tokyo than they do with you as their parent in their own home.
Yeah.
Because cell phones equalize culture, and they can be in rooms that you're not even aware of and be talking to people that you don't even know what they're talking about or whatever. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden your kid's culture changes. So
Yes.
just another thing to be aware of. I mean, I think that combination of cell phone and a box
Yes.
government school system is not a winning combo for our young kids' hearts. And so many times
Yeah.
the 12-year-old gets a cell phone for Christmas and it's this big gift from the parent, but there's no training about how to manage it or what that could do to the relationship. So Glow Kids is another really great book as far as what cell phones and pixels do to a kid's brain. Very interesting and a little horrifying stuff to read. But I really feel like every parent needs to educate themselves on digital media and what it does to your kids as well. So just
Yeah.
a little
And for
plug
those
there.
parents who are thinking, oh my goodness, Christy and Lisa are telling me to shelter my kid. No, no, we're
Well,
not. Yeah. I mean, we're
be
asking,
proactive.
we're pleading to parents to take a step back, see the forest for the trees, and really, just because something is normal and
Yes,
accepted does not mean it's healthy.
right.
So stepping back and saying, okay, this isn't what everyone else is doing,
Yeah,
but what does the research say? What is actually right? And there's a cost to that. There's a social
yeah,
cost to you, to your kids, to all of that. I homeschool, but my kids are out in the neighborhood every single night playing with
yeah.
the neighborhood kids. And I hear it. They have their cell phones, they have this, they have that. And I just think that's such an important
Mhm,
point that you make, Lisa, and that when, a lot of people assume I've been asked at a party,
mhm.
Christy, how long do you plan to shelter your kids? You'll put them in school for
Yeah,
high school, right? We hear that all the time.
yeah,
And so, she had a little too many drinks, so I didn't actually take her comment seriously. But if she was sober and
yeah,
actually cared and was asking me, I would have talked about greenhousing
yeah,
and how important it is that we are in charge of our children and
yeah,
we want to protect their little hearts.
yeah,
And we don't realize that there is serious trauma in the schools. And even if it's lowercase t traumas, there also have been studies that death by a million cuts.
yeah.
What is that saying? Is it
Yes,
thousand cuts
that's
or
it.
million?
Yeah, 1,000, yeah,
Yet we now know that those kids who experience even lowercase t trauma on a daily basis
yeah,
incessantly, they have signs of PTSD from kids who were raised in war zones in
right.
third world countries, the
Yeah,
same brains
mhm,
as those kids.
yeah,
So it's like a little bit of a wake up call of what is actually going on in these schools.
yeah,
The classrooms are incredibly under supervised,
yes,
right? What is at recess? There's one adult.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just, and I think sheltering has the same kind of connotation often as socialization, is we
Yeah.
just assume what people mean by that. And I think it's
Yes.
really, you like, just dig a little bit into what that means because our
Yes.
kids have cell phones and, they're responsible. They've had jobs, they've done a zillion activities.
Yes.
They've traveled by themselves starting at age 12. I had one daughter who like left the country at 12. So, I mean, it's not like if you want to talk about sheltering, I think like let's talk about it, but let's define things first.
Yes.
Because it might not be what I think you mean or vice versa, So
Yes. That's funny because in the socialization chapter at the end,
Mhm.
I actually list out the 13 traits of a healthy socialized child.
Yeah,
And I did that to make the point, and I actually asked my reader to are is a school required for any of these 13 items? Absolutely not. In fact, in often cases, the school will hinder this.
yeah,
And my list is not my own that I just made up. My list is
right.
based on research and psychology of what
Yeah,
healthy socialization means. And it's deep. It's deep this because it's rooted in fear.
yeah, yeah,
And there's a lot going on in our own hearts when we are scared our kid won't be
yeah.
socialized.
Yeah, or normal. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
times we're asking, will my kid get a job? Will they
Yeah.
find a spouse? Will they be able to like check out at the grocery store? Like there is a fear factor. Um,
Yeah.
So you also mentioned academic health, and that I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting two words together, academic health. Like I haven't
Mhm.
really heard it talked about that way, but that's a great term right there. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be auditing our homeschools on a regular basis regarding not only what coursework we're doing, but how our kids' attitude is towards it, how their learning is progressing. Is it working for their particular learning styles? And not to overwhelm you by saying this, because you observe it, you know, you're
Mhm.
sitting right there.
Right.
You know if things aren't working, and just asking yourself the question,
Yeah.
is this really the best fit?
Mhm.
It in my 8-step homeschool success framework. I actually have, I think it's step 4 is a homeschool audit. It's a literal self-assessment test that checks in on social health, emotional health, and then part 2 is coursework.
Yeah.
I think, but mainly one of the reasons why I did that is because moms are always, and dads who homeschool, are always feeling like they're not doing enough, and I
Yeah.
kind of put that in there so that they take that test and realize, oh wow, I'm doing way too much,
Way too
right?
much.
Because
I'm doing enough.
yes, it's like, okay, I can tell you you're doing enough, but here's an official test that will
Yeah.
prove to you. It's a very encouraged, and it is an audit because there are going to be some things. I have a special section in there just for special needs,
Yeah.
and because those, the how you audit a child who has special needs in their learning environment is different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that with academic health, a lot goes into that. And for me, the question I ask myself is, does my child love learning?
Yeah.
To me, that is the mark of a child who has superior academic
Yeah.
health. What is their orientation? It doesn't mean they're not complaining that they're doing their IEW essay on a Saturday because they didn't make their Friday deadline. It doesn't mean they're
Like a
not
true
complaining.
story.
I know, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean they're not complaining or there aren't hard days,
Yeah.
but or it doesn't also mean that you have to totally abandon and become an unschooler either,
Right. Yeah.
because that's certainly not my style, though I do honor my kids' interests very much in the
Yeah.
homeschool. There are also some non negotiables.
Right.
So, and I have found, at least for me, with my own kids and my 20 years experience in ed running the center, is that if you can get enough of that buy-in, it actually changes how they view
Yeah.
those other subjects that maybe are harder for them, or
Yeah. Yeah.
and it changes the entire orientation to learning.
Right, exactly. One of the things I talk about all the time is how to set your kids up for future success, and helping your
Yes.
kids become an autodidact is the number one way that they will succeed in the future with all these pivots that they'll be making and
Yes.
the 13 jobs that they'll be holding and all this kind of crazy stuff
Right.
coming up, right? But love of learning means that they're going to be able to be self-taught, right? Because that's what an autodidact does. They want to know something and they're not intimidated by learning and they dive right in. And literally this is one of the number one markers for future success is your kiddo an autodidact? So helping them really develop that love of learning is going to be so helpful to them throughout the rest of their life.
And
Um,
can I just make a note on that?
yeah,
Because people talk a lot about lifelong learner. I want a lifelong learner. And
right.
yeah, and I love what one time I made a video on an autodidact and the comments were like, "So you're abandoning your kid?" And I just laughed. I didn't even
Oh,
respond. But the thing about being a lifelong learner, or an autodidact, I think the underlying factor in that
mhm,
is the confidence that
yeah,
you can learn anything you feel like you need to learn to get where you want to go, or want to learn just to give you joy.
right.
What happens in our school system is kids are not taught how to learn, right? We hear this all, I'm trying to unpack some taglines we hear, because
Yeah,
there's profound meaning under them. Like, I homeschool because I want to teach my kids how to learn, not what to learn, right? Well, let's unpack that for a second,
yeah,
because yes, that's true. But under that is the confidence that they can do and learn anything they need to.
yeah,
We graduate 18-year-olds that literally they go to college, they sit in the college classroom and wait to be told what page to turn to. And
exactly.
they're 18-year-old adults. That is not someone who is equipped or knows how to give him or herself the knowledge and the skills needed to achieve whatever they want in life. They are constantly being told how they're supposed to be
Right.
learning this particular thing. And that's a travesty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so passive. And if you're
Yeah.
going to be a learner, you can't be passive.
No.
I do think I do really think that there are some things that we can't maybe learn ourselves, but one of the things that I think really is helpful to our kids, if they have that confidence, they can find the person who can teach them.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, I don't think I could teach myself to be a doctor probably, but I could find who's going to teach
Yes.
me how to be that. And
Yes.
I think that's really, we've got to make sure that our kids have the time to be bored a little bit, because that is really
Mhm.
a great strategy for us as homeschooling parents, is just not fill our kids time with all the lessons, all the sports, all the things from 7:30 to 7:30, which actually was my life as a high schooler. When I went to public school and private school,
Yeah.
is I got up and went to choir and band, and then I had a full day of classes, and then I did other activities and tennis and stuff in the afternoon. And really, I wasn't home a lot. There was not a lot of downtime. And that's one of the great gifts we get to give our kids as they homeschool, is that they have time to be bored. And
Yeah.
when you're a little bored, but you have resources around you, you discover things. And this is another great pitch: turn off the electronics, parents. Like, just don't give them a phone, because that's boredom and passivity producing, honestly. So
Right.
yeah. Okay, so we've talked about social emotional health. It's so huge now. The stats are saying that since 2020, our kids are more anxious and depressed than ever before. So parents, just take that so seriously, because your kids they need your time and they need you.
Hmm.
And even I think, like, even being in the same house with you all day and not going away sometimes can be really healing to your kids.
Hmm.
Just being in the same space where they know they have an advocate for them right there all the time, 24/7, that can really help them get over some of the anxiety 2020 caused, because we're seeing the fallout from that in the educational market left and right.
Yeah.
It didn't just go away since, because everybody went back to whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those parents who are considering pivoting or pulling their kids out for Christmas break,
Yeah.
please don't think. Take this from, I don't know, do you want to call me an expert?
Sure.
Whatever. Take
Yeah.
this from me.
Yeah.
Because I will, because I have advised people for 20 years.
Yeah.
You don't need to pull your kids out at Christmas break and then January 3rd or whatever that first Monday is, have a full blown curriculum plan all set in place. That's crippling and that's paralyzing for you. You don't need that. What we recommend, and most everyone does, I think you do too, Lisa, is take a breather,
Yeah.
have some time. Um,
Yeah.
Go through a little process of deschooling. I talk about this in chapter 11. I even have a little questionnaire and some tips on what to do during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can cover basics during that time, but connect,
Yeah.
get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a mean way, but you are going to be learning to connect with each other in different ways
Mhm.
now that you have this role, and then ease into
Yeah.
a curriculum plan
Right.
and mixture
Right.
of things. Your child will not fall behind. Your child
Right.
will not fall behind if
Right.
it takes you a couple of months, even 6 months, to figure out what's going to work for you guys. In fact, I would argue that if you actually give yourself that time, you and your kid will cherish that time
Mhm.
for your entire lives.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
my challenge. I bet you would. I bet you're both of you will look back on that in with such incredible fondness
Yeah.
that will end up being a gift, and your child in the scheme of life will not fall behind. And if you need
Yeah.
help, I'll help you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and
And you will
that's the
too.
thing I just want to tell people, is there's so many resources for you.
Yes.
Get on a Facebook group. Like, it's
Yeah.
never hard to homeschool high school. You will find 41,000 people on there ready to give you great advice. And
Yes.
if you feel overwhelmed, you can just say, I'm overwhelmed. And people go, okay, just take a breather. But I
Yes.
think that's great advice. If you pull your kids mid-year, give yourself that opportunity to just breathe, eat breakfast together, or read out loud together. And when you set the basics, here's what I would recommend as the basics: math and reading. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't have to do a whole typical course of study. And honestly, you don't even have to do those two subjects. But if you want to start with some kind of, framework, and you want it really simple, just math and language arts. It can be
Yes.
that
And there
simple.
are many, many people
Yeah.
who have already paved this road.
Yeah.
It's You're not inventing a wheel. There are
Right.
millions and millions of parents who have homeschooled their junior high and high schoolers
Yeah.
and have had hiccups and have had there's all sorts of reasons why you have to take little breaks with your homeschooling in a healthy way. What maybe you have a grandparent who is ill and you have to take care of them, or something happened with loss in your family where you have had to step back, take a little break, and only do basics for a while. Um, that is, it's not a downside. It's actually one of our superpowers that
Yeah.
we don't have to plow through our academics while we're struggling through things and overburden our kids who are developing in their own little brains as well. And yes, even if they're a high schooler, I still consider it a
Yeah.
cute little brain. I
Yeah.
love teaching my they're kids still.
They are, they are.
Yeah.
I am so excited about your new book, Homeschool Rising, and it's a needed book for the homeschool community and for those people who are considering homeschooling. I feel like homeschooling is kind of a misnomer at this point because
Yeah.
there's so many different opportunities, but it's a good catch-all phrase for now until another one is
Yeah.
developed.
Yes.
But there's a lot of opportunities for you guys to pull your kids out of school and educate them so very, very well. Don't worry about getting to college. They can get into college. And if you're not sure how to get in there, Christy and I are here to help you pave that way too. All five of my kids went to college, one with a full ride scholarship, the rest of them mostly paid for. So it's so totally doable. Colleges are recruiting
Yes.
homeschoolers because they know that they can think outside the box and they want kids who can finish things. So that's a whole
Yeah, and
different
we're currently
discussion.
looking at, and we're evaluating a program right now where my oldest might graduate with his AA.
Yeah,
So there's
exactly.
all, and it's just fantastic the opportunities that are out there.
Exactly. It's a great time to homeschool. There's never been a better time to
Yeah.
homeschool.
You
So
got this, mama, and you know what? You're brave. You're
yeah,
saying, I don't have this all figured out right now, but I know that I can do this and I know it's going to be the best thing for our family.
yeah,
That enough is good enough for a decision to be made,
yeah,
because trust me when I say everything will get figured out and your child will not be ruined for life.
yeah.
For
And
I promise.
even if you homeschool for this season and a different season comes up, it
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can change what you do then. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
so many opportunities, and I love what you said. You are brave. Parents,
Yeah.
you are brave. You had kids in the first place. You can keep doing the great parenting thing and what your
Yeah.
kids need. So be aware,
Yeah.
what are they needing? What are you needing? Maybe you're missing them too. Everybody's always like, well, my kids are missing me. But honestly, as parents, I mean, I hear this from so many parents. I kind of miss my kids. So that's a good reason to homeschool too.
Well, when you were mentioning that earlier, I was just recalling how homeschooling my children has been incredibly healing for me.
Mm,
Just with the work I've had to do on my parenting that has been beneficial to my own mental and emotional health,
mm,
uh, confronting me to be a better parent. So, but the result is my relationship is better
yeah.
with my kids. And yeah, it's hard work to do that, but it's worthy work. And
Yes.
we have a very strong connection. Of course, yeah, days are crazy and mom loses it. I
Yeah.
lose my ever loving mind on a regular basis. But I have found the time with my kids to be incredibly beneficial to
Mhm.
me. Um, and it makes me sad when moms are so uh, overwhelmed and sometimes even annoyed by their kids. They count the days till they put them, like
Yeah.
till summer ends. And it makes me sad because what a missed opportunity.
Yeah. It is
Yeah.
parenting is such a joy.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage everybody. Homeschooling is not perfect. There's challenges. I mean, you just mentioned a couple of them,
Yeah.
but it's a great way to raise your kids. It's a beautiful way to create a family culture
Mhm.
that will really help your kids throughout the rest of their lives. So we're just encouraging you if you're thinking about possibly pivoting mid-year, just do it. Just take the plunge. You are brave. And there's so many opportunities. I will list Christy's book and where you can find her in other places. You have a podcast too, and
Yep. But
exciting news.
where I shine is I do now what I used to do for those A-listers back then is I have an amazing, safe, supportive homeschool community, but the gem in that community is my 8-step homeschool success framework,
Mhm.
where you start that framework maybe in a place of overwhelm or
Yeah,
fear, and you're not quite sure what to do. And
yeah,
by the time you have gone through my 8 steps, you seriously are confident. You know that you're doing the right things.
yeah,
You're a little bit deschooled, which is a lot of what I do too, because the
yeah,
right things, yeah.
yeah,
And so I encourage you that if you are in a place where you're struggling with that and the lack of confidence, am I even qualified to do this? That's an entire step
yeah.
in my framework. So that is there waiting for you, and I made it for you.
Awesome. Well, we really believe that every parent can confidently, and even contentedly homeschool.
Amen.
Thanks for listening. Christy, thanks for being here on the podcast today. You guys let us know if you have any questions. I'll put resources in the show notes and in the YouTube comments or the little bio thing there. So you can find Christy. And of course, you can find us at It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. We will talk to you guys later. Thanks, Christy.
My pleasure.